meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, first up, we have for recognitions of our advanced placement scholars.
Hopefully my
All right, say collage, please. Introduce our recognition.
All right, so each year the College Board announces the Advanced Placement Scholar Awards. They're recognizing high school students who have demonstrated exemplary college-level achievement on AP exams. So this is released just in August. The awards are reflected on all score reports sent to colleges after awards are conferred. And the distinctions really are for students to cite among their credentials on applications and resumes. Students do not receive any monetary award from the College Board. So this year, for AP Scholars, Hudson has 68 AP Scholars. These are students who receive scores of 3 or higher on 3 or more AP exams. And these, for the most part, are 11th and 12th graders who are taking that many AP classes. Then we have AP Scholars with Honor. This is students who receive an average score of at least 3.25 on all AP exams, and a score of 3 or higher on 4 or more of the exams. So we have 48 students on that list. Then AP Scholar with Distinction, granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.5 on all AP exams taken, and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of these exams. Now you would think that the numbers would kind of keep going down. We have 50 on that list of AP Scholars with Distinction. And then finally, National AP Scholars. These are granted to students in the United States who receive an average score of at least 4 on all AP exams taken and scores of 4 or higher on 8 or more of these exams. And we have 6 of those students this year. That's just amazing. This class, well, actually, these are 11th and 12th graders, just some outstanding students. And you can see the connection between our expansion of what we're offering on AP and what's going on with the number of students being commended here. To give you a kind of an idea of where we're going, 2014, we had 119 students recognized in all those categories. 2015, 128. This year, 172. So that'll be a hard act to follow, but we congratulate all of the students. Just outstanding, outstanding efforts.
So that's a 50% increase in 2 years. What's that attributed to? Do we just have more offerings, or is it just?
More offerings, and the high school is also encouraging more students to at least try an advanced placement class. It's not so much about, getting a 3 or 4, although obviously you can see they're successful, but really trying to broaden the base that everyone can access advanced placement classes.
All right. Very good. Anyone have any comments or questions for Sandy on this? I don't know how it breaks down of those 170 plus that were recognized, how many were already graduated, but we'll look for that number to go up again for next year.
No pressure.
Yeah. Okay, we do have a citizen requesting to speak on a non-action item, and I would welcome to the podium or to a microphone Nicole Hagan, who lives on Cratley Lane in North Hudson, and she is here to speak to the board about a teacher's reflection.
Is that on? I'm not sure that's on.
It's definitely not on.
This isn't taken away from your time, by the way.
Yeah, your time doesn't start until the microphone is on, so. Yeah, is that possible? Andrea, could you swing down that microphone?
Yeah, no,
We
that's
might
what
want to
we
fix
do.
that before the annual meeting,
That's
though.
okay. Okay. Thank you. I get a little nervous still at parent conferences, so I'm a little bit nervous right now. But so I just wanted to say thank you to the board members for attending the welcome back party. Not really party, but the welcome back breakfast. It's great to see the board and to know that you're committed to the school. And Dr. Rillette, you will probably hear some of your 7 C's in my talk because I just really made a deep connection with that this year and thought it was great. My name is Nicole Hagan, and I am a kindergarten teacher at North Hudson Elementary. I am thankful for this opportunity to come to you and thank you for your services that you provide the school district and the community. I wanted to personally come and say thank you because I know that your service is often carried out in many meetings with a lot of attention to detail and oftentimes making tough decisions. Through all of that, you create an environment for me to express my passion in teaching 5- and 6-year-olds. This year will mark my 16th year of teaching in the Hudson School District, one of those in 3rd grade and now 15 in kindergarten. My mother encouraged my passion for teaching when she told me, "Find something that you love to do and make it your life's work. You will be blessed every day of your life if you do that." I will never forget my first day as a kindergarten teacher in 2001. I was so excited and anxious at the same time. All of those little faces looking at me, some with smiles and some not so sure about me. I remember the parents as well, some looking so confident and ready for their little one to begin their journey of learning, and some trying so hard to hold back the tears. For many of them, this was their first time that their child would be gone all day. I remember sharing with these young ones what fun we are going to have learning letters and numbers. I was looking forward to an exciting year as I was giving hugs and words of encouragement. The first day of school continues to bring me that same excitement as it did last Wednesday, September 7th, when our kindergartners started all day. And on that important day, 22 special relationships began. To me, they are my new family, not only for the next 9 months, but for the next 9 months and beyond. You see, being a kindergarten teacher is not just teaching letters, numbers, reading, and writing. It's so much more. Like all teachers, we build a foundation for our students to be independent workers, deep thinkers, problem solvers, and to possess character traits like kindness and compassion that will serve them and their community well beyond their school years. I would like to share a story about one of my former students. The parents of that student have given me permission to share this story and speak using only the first name given. Her name is Abby, a quiet and shy 5-year-old. On the first day of school, her mom and dad walked her into the classroom. I could tell she wasn't so sure about being there. I knew she would need some extra love and care. She was very observant, taking in everything about the room, her classmates, and myself. I remember her mom saying she was anxious about this day and hoped that Abby would have a great day. During morning meeting, learning time, playtime, I was able to make connections with Abby to find out more about her and what was important to her. As the school year progressed during work time and playtime, I would help facilitate and support her in reaching out to her classmates to join her in conversation and play. As the days went by and the class grew closer, Abby grew in so many ways. She began to feel safe and comfortable in our room, making friends, sharing her ideas and her thoughts freely. I am so pleased as a teacher in this district that I had the opportunity to meet and reach out to Abby and to be a small part of what has led her to become the successful young lady that she is today. She is now a 7th grader who is saving animals that are near extinction. She contributes most of her money to the World Wildlife Foundation, and her mother has shared that she has been planning for years to attend the U of M and get a degree in zoology. Abby is an honor student, enjoys playing volleyball, and loves hanging out with her friends. Teaching kindergarten is something that I love and feel deeply passionate about. I am the lucky one to have 20 new students and 20 new families to teach me every year. I am the fortunate one to be part of a school, a district, and a community that supports their teachers and gives us the tools we need to teach and treat each and every student as an individual. I share with you tonight because I wanted to give you a glimpse of what it is like to be a teacher in one of our schools. This is a job that I don't call work. I always refer to it as school. I'm going to school, which makes it more personal. I'm not just teaching children academic lessons, but also building relationships with them and their families, which go on long after they have left my classroom. I can be at the grocery store, Target, or the gym, and I'll see past students, and they will remember me and say hi. And every time this happens, my heart warms, and I have to contain myself from wanting to give them the biggest hug ever, because I am just so proud that they remembered me, but proud because when I see them, they're all grown up, and they're not that 5- and 6-year-old anymore. As a teacher who is passionate about what I do, I strive to be the best teacher that I can be by working with administration, my fellow teachers, and taking advantage of the learning opportunities provided by the district. I want to thank you for providing me the time to share my story with you and the opportunity that you have provided me to be the best teacher I can be in your district. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And any board members want to comment on our speakers?
Mr. President,
Yes. Rob.
just kudos to you and thank you for your dedication and your bravery for coming up. Very much appreciated. Great message.
Thank you.
Mr. President, tell me what dreams you have the night before school starts.
Oh, I know.
Are they
There is that dream.
I'm a retired teacher, and mine were filled with anxiety.
I just have one, and I remember even my first year of teaching, I had had the same one where they would be there the first day of kindergarten, and I'd be doing my clap and my chime and my callback, and they're still doing whatever, and then whatever principal I have, because I've had like 6 now, is standing at the doorway. And I thought this year I wasn't going to have it, but sure enough, it came like 2 days before. It was a little bit late this summer, but yeah. But also, I think it just reminds me that, every year is so new. Every day is so new. But as a teacher, you can really say that you have a job where every year is brand new. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, thank you again for sharing that. We don't serve on the board necessarily for the thanks, but I would have to say over the last year, I probably have gotten more gratitude expressed towards the service than I had in all the other years before. And so for those people who say this is a thankless job, I just disagree with them, because we do get the thanks, not that we do it for that, but I want to thank you for your service and know that this is about improving lives. It's not just about putting out a product. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now on to reports. Turn it over to Dr. Nick for superintendent's report.
So first up, just want to give an update on construction projects. Want to give an update on construction projects. They're ready to recap, which can also be found on the website. Just gives a little bit of a background on where we're at with things. But just kind of the long and the short of it, the middle school project is moving along quite nicely, quite quickly. The budgets are coming in right where we need them to be. We anticipate that we're going to start to see job site trailers on that site in the next 2 weeks, with potentially construction fencing going up sometime within the next few weeks as well. The first bid package that the board will be getting to take a look at will be coming up here. I think it will go out to bid in October, so you'll probably be getting a look at that at the September work session and trying to get that done. So we're moving along quite well. We only received one bid on the precast, but it did come in about 17.5% under what we thought the budget was going to be, and they are a very reputable company. And so, we'll be looking for the board to approve that at their October meeting, so we can get that rolling. We've started the process of picking out finishes and things like that for the middle school. We're hoping that for the next work session, we'll start to see some more virtual reality of what the finishes actually look like inside the building. I did send the board some websites that showed some virtual reality images, and if you happen to use the Google Glasses, it's kind of a neat experience that you can do. On the high school site, also on the middle school site, we are in the process of relocating the plants. Jim Stasical and Gary from Krause Anderson have met with the landscape person to relocate as many of the plants as we possibly can that are in that outdoor school garden area that we're going to be building in. And we'll also be relocating, I think, 4 or 5 of the trees as well. The trees won't be relocated until the last possible moment before we break ground, because we want to see if we can give them as much time as we can to let them go dormant, or get as dormant as they can before we move them. They have the best success rate. The high school project is moving along. We've spent a lot of time talking about site. We will be, we feel like we have a pretty good handle on that. We'll be having the city come to our all-day meeting on Tuesday, so about a week from today, to start to get some some feedback from them on the site plan. Trying to schedule, working with the mayor to schedule a meeting with the city council, just an informal meeting where our architects and engineers can present to the city council and just say, hey, what questions do you have? This is an $85 million investment in the middle of the city, and not as part of the approval process, but well ahead of the approval process, just to have an informal dialogue and work through that. So we're working to try to get that done. That's looking like it'll be October 3rd, if we can make everything work. And then we also have just constantly programming the building at the high school and working through some different things there. The groundbreaking ceremony, and we've talked about this once before, but I want to bring it up one more time. The groundbreaking ceremony for the middle school will be on October 18th. It'll be at 6 o'clock at the middle school, and then that usually takes about a half hour, and then we'll head inside to the multi-purpose room. We'll have some refreshments there, but then we'll have our public meeting, number 2, to talk about the middle school progress and also the high school progress for the public as well that evening. So pretty exciting time when it comes to construction. I don't know if anybody on the construction committee would like to add any comments or things that I've maybe left out.
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, from a construction project perspective, there's a ton of synergy. The speed at which this project is going is unparalleled to any project I've seen. And Nick, I don't know if you want to talk to that at all, but just an absolutely fantastic collaborative environment with a focus on education, a focus on feedback from our teachers and our leadership, principals. So all in all, kudos to the team.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the project's moving very quickly, the middle school project, but even the high school project, even though it doesn't break ground until next spring. As we met for another 4 hours today, we found out that there's just so many more things we're constantly having to meet on. So the meetings have gone from every other week for about 9 hours to potentially they're going to go to every week for at least a full 9 hours and potentially a second day as well, to try to get all these questions and process things answered. The projects are very complex. The middle school project's getting more and more complex as we're talking about phasing and connecting, but the high school project, we're just starting to dip into that. So, all right, enrollment update. You can click on that document. This is a draft, and it's our first week enrollment and where we're sitting. And you can take a look as far as where we're sitting. We're sitting at about 54, 58. I went back and tried to look at kind of the students and seats number in January. That was our last kind of official enrollment count, and we were sitting at about 5396. So it looks like we're doing a little bit better, or on pace to do a little bit better than we did last year enrollment-wise. The high school, for example, last year in January was around 1765. Right now, the high school is at 1806. The middle school last year, about in January, so about 8 months ago, was around 1274, 1275, and right now it's at 1325. And then the elementaries were about 2357 in January, and right now our elementaries, I believe, are right around 2327, so only down 30 students. We were originally thinking they were going to be down about 100. And so 1 year does not make a trend, and I would always caution people not to read too much into the numbers. But it's very good news, obviously, that our enrollment is not only holding steady, but we're gaining some students. So the official count will come out. It happens this Friday. It'll be the official count. And then what you'll see is a different number. It's called aid membership. Tim will talk about that in the annual meeting tonight, but that's how we calculate for financial purposes. These numbers are enrollment numbers and where we're sitting as it relates to our demographic study that we had done a year or two ago. So really good news. We still have that one section in second grade at Holton. I was at the Holton parent meeting last night, and they said, what is it going to take to get that to a two-section class? And I said, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, that that was kind of ship has sailed about 9 years ago. So we would need another 10 or so kids in there to justify splitting it up, because as soon as we go to third grade, the class size guidelines go up. And so they understood that as well, but they no harm in asking. So we're definitely having a good situation with our enrollment and where we're sitting. The start of the school year, and I'm going to limit my comments to the actual start of the school year. It was outstanding. We're in every building. I think all the directors and myself were in every building the first day. The kids were excited. The teachers were excited. As I walked around, I got to tell people this is like all the holidays wrapped up into one. Everybody's just so excited to be here, and it's really neat. And as I was in some of the buildings, like even in Holton was one of my last buildings I went to, by the end of the day, some of those upper grades were already in their routines. I mean, so on day one, they were already starting in on their classroom routines. They weren't wasting any time, with get to know you activities or things like that. They were already in full bore, and so it was really neat to see those things. Busing went very smoothly, I think, to start the year. I mean, you always have some hiccups when you're busing this amount of kids, but food service went really well. And so the start of school has been really a really good start to the school year. We had a great back to school with our staff, and I think Jamie's going to touch on that during his address. But the only hiccup, I think, and if you think about the first 2 weeks of school as being the start of school, is, we lost power today for about an hour and a half, I think, in 5 out of our 8 buildings. And so, and of course, it happened right over lunch. It created some issues for lunch. It also created some issues with emergency lighting and things like that. But everybody kind of worked together, pulled through on it, and by the time the power came back on, we were moving in the right direction. So, we're having a good start to the year, and we hope to continue.
So our emergency lighting does work?
It did kick on at the high school. It kicked on at the middle school. We don't have as much emergency lighting as we would like to have in probably some of the elementary buildings, and that'll be something that we're looking at. The other thing is the redundancy on power for our servers and things like that, which should be taken care of with the new addition or the renovation at the high school. So, because the high school went dead, that meant the internet district-wide went dead, which meant our phone system went dead, which meant, you couldn't call outside of the district. You couldn't do a lot of things. So, all those things we'll take into consideration as we're looking at these renovations and trying to do those things. So, definitely a learning moment. Absolutely. Normally, we don't have 5 buildings out of 8 go out at once. The only ones that didn't go out were Rivercrest, Holton, and North Hudson. So.
All right, we kind of went right over the enrollment update. Did anybody have any questions on either that or the school year? All right, not seeing any. Then, as far as my report, I just want to echo what Dr. Nick said about the back to school. I had an opportunity to attend with, I think, Sue, Lynn, and Bruce was there. The new teachers, and Rob was there. All right, so
The new teachers?
the new teacher thing.
Oh, no,
you?
it wasn't the new teachers, that was the different
Okay.
one, yeah, sorry.
I had Rob and Sue there, I guess, at the new teachers. We have 27 new teachers. My observation from that was interesting to hear how many people are alumni of Hudson. Have been to school here, and now they're coming back to teach here. So that was pretty cool. And also people who had lived here, maybe had taught here in the early part of their career, and now are coming back to finish their careers here. So that says a lot about what kind of community we have. And then it was also interesting to have, it's of course a politician year. I mean, it's a political year, and we had Sheila Harsdorf, state senator, and our congressman, Sean Duffy, there. And Congressman Duffy had some remarks that I think, talked about different recognitions and opportunities for that participation in national organizations and so forth. But it was good to hear them comment. I saw Sheila and Sean exchange words and kind of nodding when Nick was going on and on about the accomplishments of Hudson School District. So I think I popped a button, being pretty proud of our district. So that was good. And then just the next week we had our start of the school year, and as you indicated, there were 6 of the 7 board members being able to make it. I know Sandy had a health issue here 2 to 3 weeks ago, but I'm glad to hear your back is better. It was a lot of energy in the room, and our speaker, he's spoken before, I think, 1 or 2 times, and Nick himself has heard him probably about 10 times. So a lot of humor mixed in, but then yet some kernels, and I talked to a couple teachers that have gone through 25, 30 or more, actually 2 teachers that were over 30 years of having these back to school, and they said this was certainly unique, but also some of the comments that he made were certainly true. So that was really interesting to be part of that, and so I think it's a great start to the year. Now, the groundbreaking, you kind of stole my thunder there.
Sorry.
Yeah, but the news to me was the start time, because I thought we were looking at 5:45. But you think we can get this done and still start our public meeting at 6:30?
Yeah, I mean, the public meeting will start between 6:30 and 7. Yeah, we'll post it, but I mean, usually groundbreaking doesn't take more than about 20 or 30 minutes outside, and then usually you move inside for people to look at drawings and things like that.
Now, how many, just a show of hands, how many board members can make it to the groundbreaking on October 18th? We got 1, 2, 3, so we got 5 of the 7, that's good. We have invited, in addition to former board members, we've invited also the PST members who were part of that process, and I'm missing a very large group. Who was the other ones that were
Elected officials, people that participated in the PST process, as far as like all the people that came and gave their names and came to our informational meetings and things like that.
Okay, all right.
So we'll send an invite to them as well.
Okay.
Teachers, students.
You mentioned the city, right?
What's that?
City leaders?
Yep, city, yep.
Yeah, and then shortly following that groundbreaking, and then we have our second of what will be a series of public meetings about the project's progress and so forth. We've already had one, which was in early August. And that one was here in this auditorium. It was more directed, particularly invited were the neighbors who have property contiguous to the district, to the high school here. But I don't know, we're not necessarily inviting those same neighbors, but they're welcome to come because the public meeting is going to be not just about the middle school, but about the progress of the high school plan.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, so we have a mailer that's going out. It'll go out to everybody in the district the end of September here to make sure everybody knows we're having those meetings and also giving a progress update. So, that we would like to have lots of people here. We like to have lots of questions, and hopefully we can answer the majority of them.
Okay. And it'll still be months away before we set a groundbreaking for the high school, but that's likely to occur maybe in April.
More than likely, yes.
Yeah. So, because we have to get the stadium started before the school year is out, right?
Correct.
A lot of excavating involved in that. So then, as far as upcoming meetings, for posted meetings, we have our, again, our work session is in 13 days. And we get back on our regular meeting schedule. There is the regional WASB meeting, and there too we've invited all board members for that. And do you have your calendar up, Nick? So I don't have that. I might have it on my phone. Is in a Tuesday of next week?
Yep, Tuesday next week.
All right, so that's the 20th.
Correct.
And when does the bus leaves right after the secondary space construction meeting is done, and
Yep.
we'll leave here from the high school then?
Yep, at 5 o'clock.
At 5 o'clock, okay. So for board members that can make that, last year it was me and Sue, so if we can have, it's one where there are some boards, they have their entire board attend that one. It's kind of a, the fall regional meeting is one that's the best attended next to the annual meeting that's at the state convention that's in January. So those are upcoming. Is there anything that I missed with regard to meetings? Construction committee continues to meet every other Tuesday, even though Nick and some of the administration are meeting every Tuesday with our construction manager. The architects come up also every Tuesday?
It depends. Sometimes they do it via conference call, sometimes they come.
But for the construction meetings?
They're here for all of those.
For all of those, okay, very good. Well, then finally, we'll turn it over, and Nick, are you doing the district goals, or are you
Yes.
delegating that?
Well, I'm going to delegate it out. I'll be, each director is kind of going to cover their area, and this is the 15-16 district goals, and some of this should look very familiar. I went over quite a bit of this during my evaluation process, and that's what that progress report was on April 8th. But publicly, we have not kind of done a final report on where we're sitting. So I will turn it over to Learning Services to start with the first set of goals.
Thank you. And I'll represent Learning Services in going over the implementation of HSD 2025. So there were 3 areas as part of the goal. Elementary literacy was one. Literacy aligns with the graduate learner outcome, our foundational content areas. And I'll just highlight a few of the areas that were strongly addressed. One is elementary SMART goals, continue to be focused on literacy. Teachers were provided professional learning on writing and spelling workshop. And in grades for K-5, English Language Arts, the curriculum guides now, that means the standards, the assessments, the learning targets, and the resources, they are all housed on a Google site as a result of our curriculum specialist outstanding work, which we want to showcase at some point. And then we also reviewed handwriting resources and selected handwriting without tears. At the middle school level was continuing the implementation of the one-to-one technology initiative. And for that goal, we expanded one-to-one to 7th grade and refined and expanded the professional development opportunities for teachers regarding meaningful technology integration. We also created a rollout plan to equip grades 3 through 12, with devices in 2016-17. We transitioned to Google Calendar and Gmail, and then we also selected School Blocks as the learning management system solution. As far as high school, with Advancing High School Learning for the Future, they revised the application process to create a broader student interest, incorporated an industry mentoring program for the junior year, planned for integration of Academy 10th grade science and English classes in 2016-17, and also developed a planning process for the potential expansion of future academies. Thank you.
You want me? I'll go ahead on community connections. So, as you all know, our rebranding was launched successfully, and we'll continue to be integrating that brand image and philosophy into our messaging and practices moving forward. Very favorable feedback on the image. We have about 8 local vendors, printing vendors, who have gone through the permissible use agreement that you all approved and have had really good feedback from folks in the ease of being able to access those images and then move forward with their own business needs there, and also providing services to a lot of our school Raider gear kinds of needs. And also improving how we are communicating board meetings and documents, getting those out to stakeholder groups prior to meetings so that that others have that opportunity to also see what the board is discussing at each meeting, and we'll continue to do that. The new website provides easier navigation so people are able to find information quicker and just less confusing. We've also been invited to present to superintendents statewide on the website and the philosophy of creating a website that is really customer focused. So that's kudos to our work in creating that new website.
Then I'll have the opportunity to talk about investment in human capital. Our goal was to advance implementation of the multi-year strategic compensation plan. And this was the first year, as you guys all know, the first year of the new certified staff salary structure implementation. So we're in the first of the 3 learning years. And that required really focus on 2 primary areas. It's the communication effort, which goes to all staff, but then also the process and the implementation of such a comprehensive system and all the little steps that go along the way, whether it's opting in, opting out of individual teachers to the system, the performance component, and then just developing the processes, the spreadsheets that go along with placement of staff and the implementation of the different components, whether it's experience increase, whether it's performance, stipends, and then lots of opportunities again for communication to constantly give teachers forums to ask their questions and continue to communicate messages in that way, whether it's teacher advisory committee, teacher salary structure. Again, building forums was something that we did quite a bit last year. So we'll continue to do that. We're also in the process of developing the administrator pay for performance structure that we'll be bringing to you shortly. So that's another component. And then we have completed the recommendation for 16-17, and the board approved 16-17 increases for all staff was completed prior to the end of the 15-16 school year. The second goal was the development of the organizational flowchart. That's still a work in progress in terms of analysis of Skyward data at a level that it has not been performed before in the district, and building in consistencies and building in checks and balances within the system. Human Resources works closely with financial services, and we're well underway on that project as well.
Do you want, I'll go ahead on that with the referendum in the community engagement. I think the level of community engagement that we provided throughout this process really led to the successful passage of all 3 referendum questions. A testament to our work in that area in developing really a very comprehensive community engagement process. 3 folks will be going to the state convention in January and doing a presentation. We were asked to present that information. So again, kudos to the process steward team and to the board in establishing that level of community engagement.
I'll take create the 10-year facility plan to address ongoing maintenance of facility upgrades for all district properties. This is an ongoing plan. We've started to explore different options associated with it. We did have a vendor come in and give us, at their cost, kind of a first glance of their thought of what our facilities, condition of our facilities. But the timing has not been where we could dedicate the amount of time to this that we wanted to this spring in the effort to try to get these building projects up and running. And so we would see this as an ongoing goal to create a 10-year facility plan for all of our buildings and primarily the 6 elementary schools and the middle school, because the high school should be in pretty good shape for the next 10 years when this thing is all completed. But the middle school, again, is getting an addition, but the majority of the building is not getting touched. And that still is a 20-some-year-old building. So we will continue to build upon that, and you'll see that in our goals for the next, for the upcoming school year that's in the action items.
Okay. Anyone else speaking on any of the others? Are we through the list? All right. So is there questions, Sue?
Oh, yes, I wanted to go back to your comments and Dr. Ouellette's about the, I know I'm going backwards, but I didn't catch your eye, the luncheon and the meeting here for the first day for teachers. I just want you to know that I thought Jamie did an excellent presentation of his comments, especially because it engaged the people in the audience. It wasn't just like, a lecture. And that was well received. And I also thought, and I've expressed this to Dr. Ouellette, that his presentation clearly showed the strength of his abilities as, being in charge of the district. But I also thought that he presented himself in a way that teachers knew he was very accessible.
Thank you, Sue, for those comments. And I guess my comment on these 15, 16 goals, we've had for, well, probably 3 years now, we've had kind of aggressive goals. They haven't been as detailed as this, maybe in the past, and because, again, they're sometimes multiple-year goals. But I think that this is what we need to strive for. We need to constantly be raising the bar and keeping the bar high. If we make our goals just super easy to achieve, I don't think we take us anywhere. In order for be excellent, I don't expect us to hit 100% of our goals. And for instance, this flow chart, the hierarchy in the organization, I would be very suspect if we had that completed in Nick's first year when he's barely getting to know everybody in the district and how it works. So I'm glad that that's taking multiple years, because I think we're going to do it right by doing it that way. So to see some of these goals carry over to 2016, 17, which we're going to be talking about in a few minutes under the action item, I think that that's good that we have multiple goals and we set the bar very high. Maybe we don't clear it every time, but we make progress when we do set it high. So any other comments?
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, just all in all, I know that Sue and I are just into our, second year, but I had, a certain understanding of the district coming into it, but the performance and the level at which the team here operates is fantastic. The things that we accomplished, the branding, Dave, Sandy, Tony, the HSD 2025 implementation plan, absolutely fantastic. And so thanks to everybody for all the great work that you do in helping us stand out as a district.
One comment, just and it's probably more of a point of housekeeping. So as we roll through tonight's meeting, we may or may not get done with all these action items before we have to recess to head into the annual meeting. But one item that needs to happen before we head into the annual meeting, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, is the approval of the preliminary budget. And so after the consent agenda, I would think that we would want to make sure that maybe we move that one up so that we ensure that that gets done prior to the annual meeting. And then obviously we'll knock through as many of these action items as we can, but then that way we can come back and hit them after the annual meeting.
I got it. We'll go from A to J and then we'll go back to B. All right? Sound like a plan?
A to I.
A to I.
Yep.
Sorry. Oh, you threw in another one there. It wasn't in the agenda before. Okay.
Oh, it was posted. It was posted.
Well, when I say before, we've had, you start telling us the agenda's out there and you were working on it for 4 days, so, all right, good. I just learned I should just learn to ignore your notices for 3 days and then read the agenda just the day before. All right, so we're now on to the topics for action, and I will entertain a motion that includes the language regarding expenditures that you have before you.
Mr. President, I move approval of the consent items and that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,396,060.68.
Second.
Motion by Lynn, second by Rob. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the consent agenda is approved. Now we'll move to approval of the preliminary budget for 16-17. And do we turn it over to Tim right away, or do you want to say something first, Nick?
Tim Erickson will be presenting the 2016-17 preliminary budget.
All right. Okay.
I'll interject as needed, but I doubt it'll be needed. He'll do a great job.
Okay, so I'll just kind of run through this pretty quickly. A lot of it's the same information that you've seen before. The biggest change is that we did look at, as we continue to develop the budget, we did look at we were able to bring down by another $150,000 of expenditures in the salaries and benefits area. So the impact, when you look at the 16-17 preliminary estimates for mill rate, down at that highlighted line down there, we still have the estimate of the almost 5.6% increase in valuation. That will be coming out from the Department of Revenue, the final number in October when you adopt the final budget. The total levy, debt service, and general fund stands at about just over $38 million. It is a 17.64% change A lot of it's driven by, of course, the referendum projects, also by, we had relatively flat state aid. We had student membership units go up, which are what our aid is based on, but yet the equalization aid is projected at this point to go down, and that's a projection. We had the July 1st, it's based on a July 1st estimate by the Department of Revenue, or by the Department of Public Instruction, and so we'll get their final number. Again, that number will come out in October. Mill rate, though, when we look at mill rate, it's up $1.02, and when we looked at referendum impact, we projected a 90-cent increase on the mill for debt service, and then roughly 15 cents for new operational costs related to the referendum. So that would be a total of $1.05. So that doesn't include our existing general fund. So when you look at general fund and the referendum impact, at this point we're about $1.02, which is pretty decent compared to what we were putting out for the estimate for referendum. The bottom section of that sheet goes through, again, the estimates for valuation per taxing district. You can see, everyone's pretty well in line, with the exception of St. Joe. St. Joe is looking at, this would be the second year of a 13% increase in their values. And then we've got a little information below about how you calculate mill rate. So I'm going to move on to the next page unless you've got questions. All right, here we go. So again, I won't go through a lot of this because it's no different than what you've seen before, except with the $150,000 reduction. So property taxes line 1, that went down by $150,000. And then the corresponding expense item, salaries and benefits, that went down $150,000 for a 245 increase. So you get down to the bottom. I did take out the property purchases from the high school end of things. That was about $359,000 all in. So net, when you look at net general fund, 3.98%. And then we're still planning on a deficit budget, so we're going to pull $500,000 out of fund balance this year. And then when you get to the next page, it gives a breakdown of the general fund and debt service levy summary. You can see that middle line item, debt service levy on the new referendum debt, and that's just over $3 million. And then the general fund levy there as well. Then the second section, the projected unassigned general fund balance, by pulling that $500,000 out, drops down to 27.33, still within the 25 to 30% board policy. And then you've got the board committed fund balance for capital projects. We took the high school properties out of that, so it's standing at $3.7 million, and then the additional planned dollars coming out of that for the referendum of $3.5 million, split between the high school and middle school. So that'll go down, eventually drop down to about just under $250,000. So that would conclude the summary portion, and then the second portion of this is the proposed budget by summary, gives you fund balances. Again, they're the same numbers, only presented a little bit differently. The DPI state requires us to present in a little bit different format. I don't think it's as useful for many users to look at, but we provide it because they do like to have us present it this way. And so it goes through general fund, and then we get into special projects fund, which is special education, and grants and contributions. Debt service fund, of course, you see the numbers jump around there quite a bit because we are accounting for the bond issuance there. And then the capital projects fund, that's going to hold the cost for all of the referendum projects. So those are the estimates those are really based on rough estimates at this point as we get started on that project. Food service, community service, and package and cooperative do not use property tax funding. Those are more standalone programs, and those revenues and expenditures are restricted for those programs. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right, I had one question on the fund balance that we have for capital projects being reduced to 3.75 essentially now after the purchase of the properties here at the high school grounds. So that 3.75, we won't be actually dipping into that fund until we've exhausted the financing that we've already engaged.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we want to use the bonded debt first, just because we've got different requirements to use that debt, and then whatever we come to once we finalize budgets and get to a point where we know what we're going to be spending once proposals come in for different contract work, then we'll be able to determine exactly what we'll need to take out of fund balance.
Okay. Other questions, comments, observations? As Tim said, this is similar to what we've seen, particularly the major budget assumptions, the one-to-one Chromebook initiative implementation, the purchase of the properties adjacent to the high school, and restoration of district-wide projects and health insurance savings. So, Rob, you have...
Yeah, just a quick question. You know, Tim, during the referendum process, we promised an increase over the 2015-16 by 97 cents for debt. How are we doing this year as far as the budget goes? Are we in step with that? Because we purchased $80 million of
right.
bonds.
So yeah. So we've got. So the second part of that is we've got another $10 million of debt that can be issued in a second round. But what we wanted to do again, as we discussed that with the board, is to wait and see where our numbers start to fall. We may not, there's a possibility we may not need to issue a full 10 million. So, but if we add that in, that's also where we're landing right where we should be. I've got at about $10 million, and I think we're standing at about, the debt service right now is about 80 cents. So when we issue the 10 million, that would add another 10 cents to the mill to get us to the 90.
So we're in step with what we've promised the community?
Yeah, yes.
And I know that we're going to be repeating this discussion when we have the annual meeting and we have our citizens that attend that. But I think, again, good job, Tim and Mark and everybody at Financial Services, and then all the work that goes in from all the different departments, because it is a many-month project. It's not like we whip up this budget in a week or two. It starts in March and April, and it's continually refined. What I find surprising on the good side is that even with the implementation of our teacher salary structure and the commitment that we made there, which was kind of a 3-year process, this is the second year into that, we're looking at a 2.45% increase in salaries and benefits district-wide for salaries and benefits, and an overall fund expenditure increase of under 4%, and that's even with, putting in more money for the Chromebooks, and so overall the increase is, I think, less percentage-wise than what we were looking at in April anyway. So.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Tim, can you speak to how we finished up this current budget year?
Sure. What we were looking at, if you look at that summary document again, we were looking at a deficit of about $942,000. We're actually finishing in the black for this year. In large part, we were able to shift some costs. The science labs that we updated here at the high school, we were able to shift those costs. Some of those costs fell into the previous year, so that helped balance out, and so we didn't wind up taking as much out. So we actually would finished about $500,000 to the good is what we wound up with. So, and the audit is in process and being completed, and the auditors will give their report on that as well. But that's where we stand.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the preliminary budget for 16-17.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bruce, second by Lynn. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving it, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Budget, preliminary budget is approved. And now we will resume back to the beginning. We look at HSD 2025 Long-Term Implementation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll take that one. And the presentation tonight represents the work of Learning Support Services. This is an abbreviated summary of the work that you've already seen. Because it is shorter, I'll just take it and cover the work from Sandy and Tony and represent our collective work. The implementation plan is something that we've shared at the August 22nd work session, and then again, Sandy and Rob weren't able to be at that work session, so we had a private conversation with them to fill them in on the details. Essentially what we're looking at here is looking at where we are with our implementation of HSD 2025 and seeing what we need to do to cross the finish line and accomplish the goals set forth in that plan. Upon analyzing the vision, what we came to realize is the primary missing component or the next component that would be necessary is a collection of student measures to say what are our students actually accomplishing as compared to the graduate learner outcomes and the goals that were set forth in that plan. We took that concept and we broke it down into 5 areas, the first being data-driven decision-making and looking at taking a close look at aligning HSD 2025 both to the SMART goal process and the curriculum process. It already is in place, but there were some finalizations to that process that were necessary in order to have us actually measure the student outcomes. Secondly, we have the teaching and learning system improvement. This is about restructuring learning services to offer the best, highest quality service most efficiently. Then we have technology integration, which we've talked about quite a bit, but this is increasing meaningful access for all of our students. And part of this, obviously, is the one-to-one initiative, but it goes beyond that. Standards-based grading as a tool that will help us measure the progress specifically of our students, not only to the standards that we're held accountable to and our students are held accountable to, but also the measures of the vision that would be aligned to that system. And then finally, we have the academic career plan. We'll be using Career Cruising, which is a self-exploration and planning program that will help our students achieve their potential. Down at the bottom, you're going to see a summary of the potential budget impact in each of the next 3 school years. You'll notice it does not start with 16-17, and that's because the budget was already approved for 16-17. We will be addressing all these areas in the upcoming year, but that budget has already been approved. One thing that I want to make clear when we seek your support and endorsement of this plan, it is the conceptual plan that we're seeking approval of. Not the specific budget items or the staffing associated with it. That would all go through the typical staffing process and the budgeting process as has been done in the past. Real quickly, you can see in the 2017-18 school year, there's quite a few line items there for a total of $86,900. 2018-19, that's a total of $208,000. You'll see a big expenditure there that is associated with the replacement cycle for classroom displays. Those are the projectors and smart boards and so forth that we have in the classroom. And then again in 2019-20, there's another sizable chunk of money there that is associated with having a sustainable plan for our devices, our Chromebook devices for grades 3 through 5. Right now, as you remember, we just took the devices that were already used at the upper level and moved those to the elementary. Any questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Carrie.
Dave, other than the items that sunset in 2017-18, which is $2,800 after 1 year, and $20,000 after 3 years, and then this in 2019-20, sunsetting after 1 year is $3,000. This is in fact a cumulative effect rather than just annually.
That is accurate. It would be a cumulative effect from that point forward.
So roughly 400,000.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So just to piggyback on what Carrie just asked, that sustainable plan for replacement cycle for Chromebooks would become an annual expenditure of $125,000 then?
Yeah, essentially the way that budget was developed, we took a portion of the current lease and proportionately applied 3 more grade levels to that lease. So that would be that increase. One thing that I should mention is that through the budgeting process, we would likely find reallocation opportunities for these, but what we wanted to do was show you the full plan and what we thought would be necessary to carry that out. When we go through the staffing process and the budgeting process, we seek opportunities to reallocate funds, but we wanted to give you an overall picture.
Any other questions then about the long-term implementation plan, executive summary of 2025?
Just a comment, Mr. President.
Yes.
And I think it's good we're pushing this forward, right? I mean, you look at the way our kids are learning today. I mean, this is something that we absolutely need to continue to move forward with in our district. These kids are so far ahead of where we were at, you know, going through this same type of learning, and to, you know, be at home and watch the kids interacting with these devices and you know, flying through things like, again, I think it's going to set them up for great success once they move on past their middle school and high school years. So nice job continuing to kind of move this along and expedite it.
Well, this echoes the comment I made earlier about when we were recognizing our AP and not just resting on our laurels. We have, you know, an implementation plan here that is more of a process rather than an event. It's not just like when 2025 happens, okay, we can stop trying to improve now. This is something that is a constant process. So I appreciate, you know, what we're trying to do here, and keep it a long-term plan as well, and that we're not just going from year to year. So with that, is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve the HSD 2025 long-term implementation plan.
Second.
Motion by Rob, second by Sue. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the motion passes, and we have adopted the long-term implementation plan for 2025. Which is now, what, 8.5 years away. So, okay. Then next would be the 2016-2017 district goals.
So again, this will be a group effort to kind of explain the goals and go over them for this coming year. And so each department has their area they're focusing on. So I'll turn it over to start with LSS.
So first, once again, we're talking about the advancement of HSD 2025, and just as it aligns almost exactly with what Dave has just shared. So we're looking at data-driven decision-making, technology integration, obviously the 3 through 12 implementation this year, standards-based grading. We'd start with implementing elementary math a year from now and getting that system ready to go this school year, and then academic career plan, a state requirement that Tony and I are leading along with others in the district, and at the end of this year, we need to have an academic career plan in place. That's an expectation of the district. Tracy, I assume you're next.
So what we have here is a continuation of looking for opportunities to continue that community engagement, looking at those quarterly newsletters, also looking at ways that we engage our stakeholders more in a two-way conversation versus just information, and maximizing technology, our social media, and being coordinated in that, and really pushing our story out there and being proactive in that.
And then the next one will be the investment in human capital as well. And they're a continuation of our prior 15-16 goals, but then also, as I referenced briefly in the other, it's not only the implementation of the teacher salary structure, but also now we're in the final stages of developing the district-wide leadership compensation structure, which has a performance component as well. And we'll be presenting that to you in the coming months, and then having to implement that over the course of this year. And then finally looking at potential support staff strategic compensation structure as well. So that's all moving forward, continuing to look at the organizational flow chart and having detailed analysis regarding that. And the board policy project is something that's actually an action item for later tonight as the first step, first of many steps or second of many steps in the process in terms of redoing the policies, aligning them with WASB's guidance as well as current state and federal laws and regulations. So that initiative is going to be moving forward as well.
Tim's up.
Okay, I'm next. All right, so we want to continue the development of the long-term district-wide facilities plan. So some of the steps in that process, you know, we've got a little bit of a start, but we want to look at a firm to perform more of a comprehensive study. We want to choose a process that provides adequate input and feedback for prioritization of the improvement projects. And then we need to get to the final step of putting that in action, and that means how do we fund those various improvement projects. One of the other things we've got on our radar is we want to continue to collaborate with human resources to improve and provide additional reporting capabilities through a Skyward employee management system. And then we want to look at possible options for automation of in-employee management and our payroll functions related to teacher salary structure. So, you know, as you know, we've moved to a different structure of pay, and now we need to look at automating that. And so we'll be looking and talking with Skyward and looking at possible ways to program something that can get us more automation in that process.
So what I'd like to comment on is the goals for 16-17 are kind of a combination of continuation of what we've been working on, and then obviously some new goals that we want to hit on. As we said when we presented 15-16, there are some goals that we didn't quite hit where we wanted to get to by the end of the year, but we wanted to make sure that wasn't dropped, that it wasn't, okay, well, we didn't get it done, so then let's just let it go and not think about it anymore. So some of those things came back up. It is a pretty aggressive set of goals from a district perspective to tackle. The team sitting at the table, I have no doubt, will be able to get after this, and it is our goal, obviously, to get them all accomplished, but we'll continue to kind of push forward similar to what we did in the 15-16 school year. Any questions I can answer about the goals?
Mr. President, I have a question. The one about leadership and flow chart, is there any possibility that you'll be bringing in someone with an area of expertise to work with you and your staff to talk about that? I mean, for model ideas about models?
Yeah, I mean, what happened, and we talked about this last year, is as we started to dig into this, we peeled one layer of the onion back, we found 5 more layers of the onion, and it got much more complicated than first anticipated. So, you know, our baseline, we still haven't been able to establish completely yet. We talked about that. There are positions that weren't identified in Skyward. There were positions that were happening in buildings that were called one thing in our management system and actually performing different functions. And so there's job creep happening on. And so a lot of that will just to get our baseline information before we can have that discussion about potentially bringing in a third party to look at our level of efficiency and what we're doing.
Mr. President?
Yes, Lynn.
I just want to make the comment that I feel like these are very robust goals, given all of the construction projects and the amount of work that this team is going to be putting in on that very important work. So I thank you for putting these out here. They seem very robust based on what you guys are going to be working on this next year.
Thank you. All right, any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Carrie.
I think Carrie, I heard Carrie. So motion by Bruce, second by Carrie. All those in favor of approving the 2016-2017 district goals as printed and reported, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, it's approved. And I'm continuing to watch the clock here. I'm going to try and give us about 10 minutes between meetings. So we'll now take on the overnight field trip approval process.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. President. And again, this is something that you reviewed in pretty extensive detail back at the August 22nd work session. This is a process that Learning Support Services has developed in collaboration with the high school administration, specifically Kevin Moore's guidance. And it's a process designed to ensure awareness and providing approval of overnight field trips to international, national, and then regional destinations beyond 100 miles. And as we had discussions about high school groups we had going overseas to international destinations, around the time that there were a number of terror attacks around the world, we started to have discussion about the importance of thoroughly vetting where our students were going to be at any one particular time and ensuring that there were extensive safety plans in place. So the purpose of this approval process is first and foremost to maximize the safety of our students, our staff, and adult chaperones who may be going with on these trips. And we would do this by ensuring a thorough, comprehensive, and thoughtful planning and supervision process for all of these overnight field trips. The process that we're proposing includes an application that the supervising staff member would complete and submit. There's a first approval process that includes a scoring rubric that is scored at the building level and signed off on by the principal, at the cabinet level and signed off on by the superintendent, and then as it advanced to the board, and you would review and take action on the application. That would in turn allow the staff to begin more fully planning the overnight field trip process, and then they would come back to the building and cabinet levels for a final approval approximately a month or so before the trip. This process includes a checklist for our staff to know exactly what the requirements are along the way and to track that they have been completed. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
All right. Well, again, I think we spent 40 minutes on this at the work session a couple weeks ago, and I was very impressed with the thought that went into this. I like having standards so that there's something very clear on the expectations. It's not like, I've got this idea for a trip, do you think you'll approve it? And then with this whole international travel, particularly, in the terror threats that are different colors in different countries and so forth, I think it's really important to have timelines involved so that, again, these are not last-minute ideas for trips. This is something that requires many months of forethought to get through the approval process, and I prefer to have, something that doesn't come to the board until it's gone through building level approval, superintendent approval, and there's some very clear requirements that if you don't have the background checks done, if you don't have trip rules in place, it's not going to get approved. So I like this process, and we want to keep our kids safe. I mean, we want them to have global learning experiences and national learning experiences, but we want them to be safe. And again, we're stressing that these are the standards for school-sanctioned trips. If it's not school-sanctioned, they don't go through this rigorous checklist. So that's something that's important for parents to know. All right, any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I move that we accept the rather exceptionally well-done overnight travel proposal.
Second.
All right. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. Now, moving on the agenda, we have the 2016 Certified Staff Handbook. And I think I commented on this at the work session that it seems like we've been approving handbook language for many months in a row now. But I know that this was a major change, and it's kind of important, especially in the post-collective bargaining era. So go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you, Jamie. And certainly, it is a significant change, and there hasn't been since the implementation of the handbook post Act 10, there haven't been significant revisions. There's been some additions along the way, but this is our attempt to make the handbook more than just old collective bargaining language, but rather to make it more of a guide to certified staff, both new staff as well as a reference for existing staff throughout their career, so that general terms, conditions of employment are understood and articulated in the handbook. And again, we covered this at length at the board work session, so I won't go into great detail, but what you have in front of you here is a clean version. So prior at the work session, you had the red line version detailing all of the changes. This is the clean version with significant additions. We went from 30 pages to approximately 56 pages in this document, so there are a lot of changes. And what's important for you to know too is that we are being very thoughtful in how we're rolling it out to staff. We have already been communicating with our principals in terms of a rollout plan, subject certainly to your approval tonight, but trying to make sure staff are comfortable both with the certified and then subsequently with the support staff rollout, because there are a lot of changes. But again, it's not a change in practice so much or procedure so much as it is a change in what I view as increased transparency in what our practices and procedures are and documenting them in this document. So that's a brief summary of the Certified Staff Employee Handbook.
All right, any questions with regard to this? Again, the summary of the major changes would be even just like referencing teachers instead of teachers, it's certified staff.
Certified staff, right, because there was an ambiguity about the inclusion of school psychologists, guidance counselors, social workers, and nurses. And so making it much more of a comprehensive certified staff handbook as compared to them wondering if certain sections applied to them or did not apply to them. And then adding sections such as there's the management rights section, as well as more articulation on discipline, but then balancing that with a lot more language on equal employment opportunity, workplace safety, technology, do's and don'ts kind of guides. All of that detail is now laid out in here in a more comprehensive way.
And again, our goal in making this handbook is not to try and anticipate every possible scenario, but we do want to set some expectations, and this is a document that I imagine a year from now the board will be seeing again for some revisions as we experience things during the school year, other than updating just the year that it applies to and starting salaries and so forth. But
yes, and every year we have had significant changes to pieces. Like last year we added about 8 pages of language just on clarifying FMLA rights, what that hadn't been clarified in the past. And so I'm sure going forward we'll continue to work with Teacher Advisory Committee, who saw this and went through this page by page, line by line about a month ago. We'll continue to work with them as we're making additional recommendations going forward, as well as administration.
as we look at any other questions about the handbook then? Right. Then I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Okay, I move that we accept this iteration of the Certified Employee Handbook 2016-17.
Second.
Motion by Sue, second by Carrie. She just beat you by a millisecond. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. And now we have another handbook to approve. That's the support staff.
And I can go through this really quickly because the same underlining principles of the certified staff, but with support staff, there are 2 primary substantive changes, which makes it a little different than the certified staff. One is we're eliminating the sunset period for retirement benefits. As we discussed at the board work session, we would like to continue those on for support staff. So previously it had been set to sunset in 2016. In addition, we're recommending significant changes to the layoff section, in which we now provide for a 30-day notice of layoff. In the past, we had strict timelines of May and then June to provide notice, which really hampered our ability to be flexible with support staff and required us ultimately to have more temporary staffing as compared to permanent staffing. This will give us a lot more flexibility, and certainly the 30-day notice is well within the norm. And typically, I would say 14 days is, on average, what is school districts typically do. But we're going as far as 30 days, and we're hopeful that that will give us the needed flexibility. Other than that, it's a continuation, for the most part, again, of prior practices, same analysis as the certified staff.
And this handbook incorporates some of those early year, first year and second year, plus salary structures where we were trying to catch up to stay comparable, which was our effort that we did back in April and May.
That goes to, the increased transparency, where we haven't had a document in the past that laid out what the actual salary structures are, or the wage schedules are for these staff. We've had them as board-approved documents. They haven't been in our handbook. Now they're in our handbook. In addition, there's more contact information. There's just a lot more information for employees to have as well.
Any questions or comments on that? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bruce, second by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. And I think that this probably is good. I'm getting encouragement from the Vice President here to go on to renumbering of school board policies, but it looks like we're not going to get through. We've got 3 agenda items. I think they'll all be relatively brief. So I'll entertain a motion to recess now, and we'll prepare for the annual meeting.
I move that we recess for the annual meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion passes. We are in recess until 7 p.m., at which time we'll call to order for the annual meeting. I would, I guess, Shana, you would be excused. I don't think we're going to have that much controversy. We need a lawyer to get through the last 3, but...
Yes.
All right. All right.
Thank you. It's pretty rowdy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shana.
Thank you, Shana. It's good to see you again.
Mr. President.
And we're giving the directors here a minute to come back up to the front. I know the renumbering of policies is something that, again, this has been...
Mr. President.
Yes, Rob.
Is there, out of curiosity, a need for maybe a 5-minute recess?
Well, I'll ask board members, do we need to recess?
We got about 5 minutes worth of stuff.
Yeah.
I think our recess would be longer than the amount of time we have.
I'm fine with either way, whatever.
Okay, all right. And
We will be very, very quick on these items. They're pretty self-explanatory. I think we might
You
be
need a
able to get
motion
about 5
right
minutes.
now?
What's that?
You need a motion to accept the...
Yeah, just a motion to group them all together and approve.
all right, well, on the renumbering of the policies, as I was saying, the school board policies has been something since I've been on the board. Bruce and I were elected in 2013, and there's tons of policies, many of which were outdated. We had a major effort to try and get policies instituted that were being required by the statute, ones updated to fit, some of those were adopted pre-computers, and so get them updated to the technology and so forth. But now, Andrea, why don't you just tell us this renumbering, which we went into again in a lot of detail, but made a lot of sense at the work session, and it's something that basically gets us in alignment with the Wisconsin Association of School Boards.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So as we discussed at the work session, it's an effort to renumber existing policies and procedures to align with WASB. So when they're offering us guidance on future policy implementation, revisions, they align. We're able to coordinate them much more easily than we are currently. And something through the process that we've identified here, which is reflected in this document, which is at the work session, you looked at a redlined version of the document. This is a clean version, similar to what we did with the handbooks. But what you'll see is many of the biggest change is that, besides completely changing the numbering format, is some of our current, as of prior to this board action, the current policies are now becoming procedures, and we'll now have to be looking at adopting new policies. So technically we have some procedures without a existing policy, but having consulted with our attorney, that's perfectly okay because all of it's board approved. There's not a significant difference between policy and procedure for all intents and purposes, so we're fine. But it's an oddity that I just wanted to highlight here, that it's something that is perfectly fine, but may seem odd if you see that there's some overarching policies that are not in place at this time. That's part of our 16-17 goals, where we'll be implementing and making recommendations to you for new policies. But the overarching goal, again, is to have a new baseline from which we can work to establish both a structure to review and revise policies going forward, and then better align them with state, federal law and regulations.
All right. One of the other changes that was discussed was the fact that board policies are going to be all electronic.
Yes.
It's no more paper copies. We used to have a 4-inch thick binder. And so we've been given permission to throw the binders away, the district. Yeah.
No, you can keep those, and it's already on the website. The electronic version of all of our policies is on our website, and now if you would act to approve this, it would be uploaded tomorrow, this new document.
And again, the difference between policy and procedure is typically policies have to be adopted by the board. Procedures can be implemented by the administration.
Yes, and policies typically are more overarching, broader language, which then directs administration to take subsequent action. And so what WASB found, a lot of our policies, the board's policies, were more appropriately put in procedures. So that's why you see some of those differences in approach.
All right. Very good.
Mr. President?
Yes, Sandy.
I move to accept the renumbering of these policies the way the administration has presented it.
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Motion by Sandy, second by Bruce, and others. I heard higher pitched voices besides Bruce, but all right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Next up, we have interagency agreements with the Hudson Police Department, North Hudson Police Department, St. Croix County Sheriff's Department. And whose one is to explain this?
That is Mr. Anthony Mayer.
All right. Tony?
Thank you, Mr.
These
President.
look very similar, by the way.
Yes, they are. They are.
Okay.
So again, this is an item that we reviewed extensively at the August 22nd work session. But just for a high-level overview, these are interagency agreements that the board and the district would be entering into with each of the 3 law enforcement agencies that support and serve in our school district. And the purpose of the interagency agreements is for us to be able to more fluidly and nimbly share information back and forth between the district and the law enforcement agency, and then vice versa. So we'd both be able to share information more quickly and easily. And the reason that that is important is that it allows for more timely investigation and action on the law enforcement agency's part, and that really promotes student and family safety. We've had some situations where it would have been very helpful for us to be able to share information more quickly. All the while, we still comply with our requirements around protecting and maintaining student records and maintaining privacy of that information. These agreements were actually drafted by our attorney, Shayna Lewis. I met individually with Chief Mark Richard, Chief Marty Jensen, and Sheriff John Schultz, and we talked through them. We talked through the purpose, and they were very, very supportive. I had a personal conversation with Assistant District Attorney Niskis, who was also very supportive. The 3 attorneys for each of the law enforcement agencies also reviewed and commented on the proposed agreement. They had one very, very minor change that Shayna is also aware of and supportive of. So we offer this to you for your consideration.
Okay. And just to point out for public's benefit too, that this is different than our agreement with the Hudson Police Department for the liaison officer and so forth.
Yes, that's exactly right. This is just pertains to sharing of student information and then information that the law enforcement agencies may be able to share with us.
Well, I have a question. Is the information that you're talking about sharing mostly disciplinary information? You're not talking about sharing grades and that type of thing, are you, here?
No, it just allows us to be able to share information back and forth, investigations, things like that, but no discipline-related information or things like that, as it pertains to an incident, not just blanket pieces of information.
Okay, so it has to be specific to
Yes.
an
Yes.
individual and that
Yes.
specific incident that's going on right at that time.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
And
thank
as I
you.
read it, it'd be purposes of safety and security.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it couldn't just be just random, hey, we've pulled this kid over 5 times, we want to see if he's a discipline problem at school. I mean, it would be something along the lines of, We've had this situation happen maybe in the middle of the day. Was he in class? Was he not in class? Did you have him absent? Was he out on a suspension? Type of thing. So.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Move to approve the interagency agreements with the respective police departments.
Second.
All right, motion by Bruce, second by Carrie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Last item on the agenda is the contract with the Intermediate District 287. I believe this would be also Tony's.
It is, yes, Mr. President, and I have to apologize for the late addition to the agenda. I know you're kind of giving Nick a hard time, but this is really my issue, and it came up related to an individual student that we'd like to be able to provide service to. So just to give you a bit of background, this is an agreement that allows Intermediate School District 287 to provide educational services to our students who are parentally placed into a mental health day treatment facility in Minnesota. And while they're getting treatment, part of their day also involves receiving education. It's been Hudson's historical practice that for these students receiving day treatment that we have paid for only the educational costs associated with their time there. Now, Intermediate 287 is now taking over the educational responsibilities in a number of facilities in Minnesota, one of which is Lifespan, another is Eris. We do have students that are parentally placed from time to time in these facilities, and we'd like to be able to make sure they have continuity in their day and are able to receive instruction while they are there. This will not result in any substantial increased costs to the district, as this is something that we've already been doing for students for many, many years.
And I assume this is something recommended by Shana, school attorney, so that we have the legal correct manner in providing this in the cross-jurisdictional issues.
This is something that I was working with our former attorney, Mick Waltzberger, on, and I've been working with our new special education attorney, Tess O'Brien, and Joanne Hart from Boardman and Clark on. Yes, and they do recommend that we have agreements in place.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding this agenda item?
Not me.
Anyone want to?
I move to accept this proposal from Intermediate District 287.
Second.
Okay, motion by Sandy, second by Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We have completed the agenda items that entertain a motion to
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, very quickly, Bruce moves, and Sandy's right there with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Next meeting will be the work session in 2 weeks, in actually 13 days from today. Thank you.